first meeting of the year, City Council of Charleston to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember White. Here. Councilmember Shealy. Here. Councilmember Lewis. Here. Councilmember Mitchell. Here. Councilmember Wagner. Here. Councilmember Gregory. Here. Councilmember Waring. Here. Councilmember Seekings. Here. Councilmember Shade. Here. Councilmember Griffin. Here. Councilmember Moody. Here. Councilwoman Jackson. Here. Mayor Tecklenburg. Here.
And now if you would like to join us, Councilmember Lewis is going to lead us in a prayer and pledge of allegiance.
Here tonight, Lord, to conduct business with the citizens of this great city without supplying our hearts and our minds together, but to put us on one accord, to liberate for the witness of the citizens of this city without Virginia. Bless us, bless the city, bless the state, bless this country, but bless those who are poor, those who are needy, but that you just continue to give us life, but we may do things that are right and pleasing in your sight. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Thank you all very much. I think everyone here has been here before. Anybody not here for their first time? Nobody. Okay, so I don't need to tell you how to get out of the building. Everybody knows how to get out of the building in case there were an emergency. Don't use the elevators if we had to evacuate. Use the 2 stairs going down and the 1 stair out the front. This is our first meeting of 2019, as I mentioned, so Happy New Year, everyone. I hope you all had a great holiday season, and thanks for the gift card. I hadn't been shopping yet, but I plan to get me a new suit sometime soon. And congratulations to the Clemson Tigers, #1 football team in the nation. You may or may not have noticed when you entered City Hall today that the Tiger Paw is flying above City Hall on this day in their honor. So we congratulate the Tigers. I went to Georgetown University, so but my blood does run a little bit orange. My dad graduated from Clemson University in 1949. And he had season tickets when I was a kid. We used to go to every home game when I was a tyke, and so you kind of get the fever when you do that as a youngster. So I'm a big Tigers fan. Next, I'd like to ask Mayor Pro Tem and Council Member, our longest-serving Council Member James Lewis, to please join me on the podium. Council Member Lewis. So. Councilmember Lewis has served for the last year as our Mayor Pro Tem. He's on a number of standing committees, including serving as the chair of our Human Resources Committee. He ably represented me and the city on call. I must admit I do a lot of events, so he might not have done the loneliest Mayor Pro Tem job in America, right? But he did an outstanding job. If he doesn't mind, I might continue to call on him, even though with a new year and a new Mayor Pro Tem. But he did a remarkable job. So let's recognize. I have this plaque thanking you for your service, Councilmember Lewis. We recognize you. We've got a picture here together. Please just step up. If you'd like to address the body, that's your pleasure.
Well, it's a tough job sometimes, serving as Mayor Pro Tem, but in order for the city to move forward, we have to continue to do the work that was applied to our hands as representative of this city, elected officials, and I take everything I do serious. As this one job I take very serious. If not, I wouldn't have been standing here for 23 years. Thank you.
Thank you, God bless you. So next we have our 2019 committee and Mayor Pro Tem appointments. I had emailed everyone to see if you had any requests. Frankly, there were none. So the committee assignments are identical to 2018 for another year. I have asked Councilmember Shade if he would be willing to serve as Mayor Pro Tem for this year, and without objection would ask for your approval. Councilmember Moody.
Yeah, I wanted to, I kind of didn't know who it was going to be, but I did ask the question of a couple of my councilmen where they'd been asked, and they said no. You know, we get to elect the mayor pro tem, and the only problem, look, I don't want to say anything it's against Mr. Shea. I mean, I don't want this tape. But as I'm going to be running for re-election, as is Mr. White, Mr. Lewis, Mr. Wagner, Mr. Waring, Mr. Shea, and Mr. Moody, and the mayor.
That's right.
And it just seems to me like that when we have these election years, that probably somebody of one of the other seats ought to maybe be in the position as mayor pro tem. And I just throw that out there to think about it. I mean, I mean, my name could have been on there, and I would hope that somebody would have maybe said the same thing. Hey, you're running for re-election. You know, it gives you a little bit of an advantage to be out there advertising that's who you are as opposed to something else. Maybe I'm all wrong here, but I'll just see what council says. And maybe that's something we ought to do, whether we do it tonight or not. I don't know. I just thought that, you know, we got 6 other people around here that are not running, that maybe this is the year for one of them to serve. Just my thought.
I understand that, and you're absolutely right. It is council's decision, election, if you will, to elect a mayor pro tem each year. That's, I believe, in our city council rules and guidelines. I guess the normal practice is that the mayor would, in effect, nominate someone, and I think in my 4 years of service, that's included Mayor Pro Tem Waring, and then Seekings, and then Lewis, and now Shade. I didn't have a lot of preponderance about the election, I'll be honest with you. As Councilmember Seekings has pointed out, it's the loneliest job in town because, well, you know, I like going to events, and I normally take them all if I can, and
you would be a good mayor pro tem.
So it's normally when I go out of town or something like that that I ask for the fill-in, but it's certainly the pleasure of council.
I'd add to that if someone decided to run for mayor to oppose you, right, that they shouldn't be considered either. I mean, that's all I'm saying is if you're going to run for re-election, that's probably there's an honor associated with that that's important, and there's a role to doing that. And I just thought we ought to take something like that into consideration. Right. I'm not going to die on this plane, you know. I mean, that's just something that bothered me a little bit. Okay. And so anyway, I'll do whatever. We can either postpone it till next week and see what everybody says, or we can vote tonight. I don't have any.
Filing for office isn't until mid-August of this year, so about 2/3 of the year will be over before you even know for sure.
We could nominate somebody else and then have an election. I mean,
you can, absolutely.
So I don't.
Councilmember Gregory, and then Shade.
That's a toughie for me because I think the precedent has been set. It's not something that has not been done several times in the past. In fact, when I ran for re-election, Mayor Riley appointed me mayor pro tem. And that was the year after I ran against him for mayor. So I just think that the precedent has already been set, and it's kind of tough, I think, to start sort of changing things a bit now. I do think that it should be the prerogative of the mayor to make that nomination. I don't have a problem with it.
Councilmember Shea.
Well, let me just make 2 announcements. Number 1, I'm not going to run for mayor. So I am not going to say, I am positive I'm not running for mayor. My wife has already threatened to leave me if I even thought about how that thought come across my mind. I am planning to run for re-election in my district, and I hope that my constituents think well enough of me, regardless of whether or not I'm mayor pro tem or not, to re-elect me. Well, maybe I'll have opposition, maybe I won't. And I talked to the mayor about this and said, it's, you know, in a re-election time, you are busy I'm busy running my law office, I'm busy being city council member, and I'll be busy doing the work of the Mayor Pro Tem, which I think is one of the highest honors, and I was very much touched and humbled by the mayor's request asking me to take on this position. And I think it is going to be time consuming, and I will take that on with a high level of sincerity and respect that it deserves. But I really don't think it's going to matter one way or another if I get reelected or not if I have that title. So I appreciate Mr. Moody's concern, and I take it with a great deal of respect of what he's asking. I don't want to cause this to be a political issue, so that's my piece. Thank you, Mayor.
And I would say that if that's the sense of the council, I would second Mr. Shade's nomination.
Call the question.
Councilmember Jackson and Lewis.
That was essentially what I was going to ask you, Mr. Mayor. What is the process for installing the Mayor Pro Tem now? Is it an official vote, or do we just?
Well, it is a vote of council. Yes, ma'am.
Right, then I would move that we take the nomination as you have presented it and vote to elect Councilmember Shade as Mayor Pro Tem.
Mayor,
We have a
and
motion.
by the way, that year,
Yes, sir.
I did over 70 events for Mayor Riley.
And one of them he had to do in French.
Yes,
And it was awesome. And I can tell you, if there was anything going to get him unelected, it was speaking in French.
Okay, Mayor, you need a second. Council member.
His nomination, and I second.
Motion and a second. Councilmember Lewis?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, before we approve the committees, I'm looking at the Budget Committee, although I'm HR Chair, which is a triple job. I think I've been to more meetings in HR last year than I think I've been since I've been on City Council. But the Budget Committee, Councilmember Waring hadn't even asked him yet, but he served so faithfully and so good on the Budget Committee.
He did.
Last year. I
Yeah.
certainly would love to see him serve instead of me.
Oh.
So
I accept that. Thank you, Councilman.
I would like to
I appreciate
serve
the
in that committee
compliment.
again. Thank you.
That was a request that y'all made. I think officially, I'd like to continue to show the Budget Committee to be the chairs of those various committees. Over time, those chairmanships will change, but certainly would recognize your willingness to serve in Councilmember Lewis's stead on the Budget Committee.
Thank you and Councilmember.
Yes, sir. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. So next, we have no public hearings, and so we have one city council minutes to approve December 4th. We have a motion. Any changes, suggestions, deletions? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Next is our citizens' participation period, and we have just a limited number of folks here tonight and a limited number of folks who have signed up.
We have five.
We have five.
Five people signed up.
We have a generous 3 minutes each this evening to speak your mind and share with us your thoughts and ideas for 2019. Who we got?
So we have Muhammad Idris, Mark Knapp, Audrey Lisbon, Arthur Lawrence, and Nicole Dietrich.
Just come forward.
In that order.
Happy New Year. Mayor, City Council, Muhammad Idris. I read yesterday an article by Abigail Darlington, and it's concerning a new office for racial bias that the mayor said he's going to establish. Every time the city official or government gets in trouble, they start dealing with the black and white issue. This city council closed out last year charging the mayor and city council, charging the mayor and the planning committee doing the wrong thing, the 75-25% rule, where the planning and zoning have more power than the city council. Look like we should have an office set up to examine that. instead of the black and white issue. Every time the trouble starts, they bring the black and white issue together. There's no black and white legal issue in Charleston, South Carolina. I got hurt the other day, and some European white folks picked me up, took me to the hospital, and when I woke up in the ambulance, I was all wrapped up, and I said, I'm not going any place with you all. They said, you going to that hospital today. You are going, and these were white folks in Charleston, South Carolina, and I'm 75 years old. We have no racial problem in Charleston. We have a corrupt problem in city government. The 75-25% rule is a corruption where the voluntary group got more power than the city council. That's a shame before God. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, Happy New Year. You know, it dumbfounds me. Where do I sign up for an $800,000 contract and parlay it up to an $8 million contract? I want a piece of that. It's crazy, folks. Now, I'll be perfectly frank. I've done some work on a job in Intermodal Center that Davis and Floyd did. And I'm perfectly frank. They did a horrible job over there. Horrible. It probably ended up costing probably $1 million extra because of the screw-ups and the stuff they didn't do right or just totally left out. I mean, they had a storm drain going right across a daggum 4-inch gas main. I'm going, how do you do that? They didn't do their job. So I think you really need to take a look back at this thing. Next thing, stormwater. You know, my wife basically brought it up to me again. Why do we allow these landscapers to blow all this pine straw and leaves into the storm drainage? I mean, do you have any idea what that stuff does? I mean, it doesn't get to the harbor. It basically deteriorates in the storm drain system, clogging it up. Now, Councilman Lewis and Mitchell and I have been to some of those. And let me tell you, the leaves get in there, then the sediment settles in. It's costing the city hundreds of thousands of dollars each year because we can't take care of the storm drainage system. Even with all the Vector trucks and with Edie's and Sanders Brothers. You got to stop it. You need to start putting some limits on what these guys can blow into the daggum storm drain system. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Lawrence. Okay. She's coming forward.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New Year.
I'm Audrey Lisbon. Short people, huh? And I'm here to talk about the changes of the proposed density for the West Side neighborhood from DR2F to DR1F. I'm a resident of downtown Charleston. During one of our meetings, there was at the West Side Neighborhood Association, there was a proposal to rezone the area and to stipulate what can or cannot be built on your property or in the neighborhood. And I admit I wasn't very knowledgeable of this proposal. So I had to do some research, and that's why I'm here, because anything that's going to decrease the property value of my property, then I'm against it. And I'm here to let my city council representative know that not only do I feel this way, but there are other neighbors who are unable to be here because of work issues and other things. They feel the same sentiments that I do, and hopefully he would advocate for our neighborhood to be against this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I wish everyone here the mayor, city council, and everyone sitting here a happy new year, and hope you have a blessed and prosperous one. Now, I'm here about what's trying to happen in the West Side Neighborhood Association area. We elect city council members to represent us and to have a meeting in our community to let us know if any changes or anything that would happen in our neighborhood that will hurt or improve our neighborhood. But we can't allow 4 individuals to come in to the neighborhood and make decisions for everyone in the neighborhood. I work with the city and the city neighborhood council for years. That's not allowed. Now we have to stop that. To change the zoning from DR2F to DR1F, no. I do not want anyone to tell me what I have to do with my property. I have property rights. And I'm here tonight representing all those senior citizens in this area. Don't take it lightly what I'm saying. Take it seriously. All those senior citizens, they vote. Renters come in here for a little while, they don't vote. Now, they don't have computers at home. They can't go down to number 2 George Street for the meeting on the 16th. They're supposed to come to city council, the same planning commission supposed to come to city council on the 26th of February to bring this to city council. Council members don't know anything about it. So who's running this? We can't allow this. And we, as the West Side Neighborhood Association, we're not going to allow it. The city must always have diversity in housing. Every building can't be the same in the city. But one thing, you can't put a handcuff on people's property just because you feel like doing something to upgrade your situation or turn against your neighbor. So please, Mr. Mayor, council members, planning commission is a system. Before you do anything in a community, you're supposed to come to the community. For those senior citizens can be able to walk down the street to the Arthur Christopher Gym or Burke Gym because they don't drive at night. And they can't come downtown to number 2 George Street because they're afraid of parking and everything like that. So I hope y'all get it together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am. No, there was one more.
Yeah, I'm over here. Correct. Hi, I'm Nicole Dietrich. I live around the corner on Elliott Street with my husband and my son, who is 4 3/4. And I just want to address the issue of tourism. Of course, I live in a very historic neighborhood, fully recognize that tourism is part of the lifeblood of this city. We have horse and carriage and walking tours come down our street all the time. And, you know, we signed up for that when we bought our property. What I didn't sign up for is having tourists come in through my gate and into my backyard twice in the last month and claiming they didn't know it was private property. What I didn't sign up for is tourists peeking through windows on the street and trespassing. People somehow don't put it together either that people actually live here, that this is not Disneyland, and they don't seem to connect that, you know, the anxiety it would provoke if someone came into their backyard while they were where their children were playing. And what I wonder is there some sort of tourist education that we could provide, something very simple for the carriage tours and for the walking tours. It's not going to get everybody, but just to remind them to respect the property owners, respect that these are families, and that this isn't, like I said, their personal Disney World to explore. Thank you.
Ma'am. We'll have our livability department director in touch with you.
Wonderful.
Yes, ma'am. Anyone else? So I would like Councilmember Gregory, yes, and then Lewis.
I'd like to react to the zoning issue.
Yes, sir.
On the west side, because to me it's a great example. It's a great example of why the apology is very important. Because we don't know whether or not the zoning will have an adverse effect on a specific population, meaning the African American community. So when we start talking about zoning, okay, we can't look at it in a vacuum. As the council member representing that area, my 98-year-old mother got her letter and wants to know what in the hell is going on. I explained to her, it's a taking. It's a downzoning of your property, Mom. That's what it is. So I think that it's very, very important for us to, first of all, make sure that the elderly clearly understands what's going on, because everybody on the west side received the letter. It is something that I will definitely oppose, because I do think that it has something to do with property rights, and it also has something to do with devaluing property.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. You know, I represent part of the west side. I received a call the day after New Year's there. The city was closed. I spoke to Philip Overcash, who they said the letter came from. I spoke to him on Friday. And I called Councilmember Gregory, and he was kind of aware of it. He said they're going to meet with me and Councilmember Gregory, but I told him, I said, when y'all do this kind of thing, y'all need to let City Council know first. I really have a problem with staff making decisions like this and going to be down zoning properties. And we have to get a call from a citizen. Where do we stand? Why are we elected? If we are elected official representing the district, when they send a letter out like that, whether they're going to send it to everybody in that neighborhood or not, it don't matter. But they should, the first people they should contact is two city council people. Oh, you got a little small part too, okay. But that, you know, that's embarrassing. You know, this lady called me, it really was embarrassing. I called Philip and he said he was going to talk to Lee and he was going to talk to Jacob and we're going to have a meeting, but now I hadn't seen the letter, but hearing from Peter is that they're getting ready to take this stuff to planning. I hope not, before they sit down and talk to us. You know, because we represent this district and we the one got to deal with the constituents. I applaud staff for the work that they do. I know staff answer to you. You are the mayor of the city. But when they're making changes in these neighborhoods, and we represent these neighborhoods, we need to know. As well as you need to know, we need to know. So when constituents come to us, we can say, well, we know this or we don't know this, or we know this, and we need to be able to try to explain to them if it's something different from what the letter says. So I just want staff to get the message. This is the first time. And I don't like it. And I don't like it being called down by people because of something the staff did that's going to affect my constituents, and then they call and jump on me, and I have no knowledge of it. Makes me look ignorant. Make people say, well, why elected him? He doesn't know nothing. Right. We need to do a better job. Since it's 2019, we need to do a better job when we make changes in these neighborhoods. We need to inform the council members on any changes that's going to be made. If it's not something on city council agenda, then we need to know about it, that they're going to make. That's all I said.
Thank you, and I understand exactly where you're coming from. And this is not on the agenda, so we won't be taking any action on tonight, but I presume it's something coming before us in the future. But Mr. Lindsay, could I ask you, just because we've had this much discussion, if you could give us a summary of this proposed rezoning?
Yes, sir, happy to.
And then I'll come to you, Mr. Waring.
So this is not a proposal that comes from city staff, from the mayor, or this is a proposal that comes directly from the representatives of the neighborhood association. This is a request from them. The rezoning letters that have gone out as a request on behalf of that group. So it is in effect a downzoning of a significant portion of the west side, and I'm not going to speculate about how this is going to be received. However, we do expect it to have a robust hearing in front of Planning Commission soon, as well as here in front of the council. So the letter that went out was the standard notice that is sent when a rezoning takes place.
And the zoning from DR 2F to 1F, and it was requested by whom again?
By a group of individuals speaking on behalf of the neighborhood association. As you know, when we receive official requests from the neighborhood association, we take those into account. And this is, again, not a request that comes from staff or from the mayor, to be totally clear about that matter.
So, Councilmember Ware.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Lindsay, can you tell us what ordinance allows those 4 people to put in a request for a blanket change like that in a significant part of the city?
That's a very good question. So when a neighborhood association petitions us for a change, for example, when Canterbury-Elliottboro came to us and they said, we want to enable short-term rentals in our community back in 2012, that's something that we're compelled to honor. Now, when that rezoning takes place, of course, it goes through the public review process, which is the way the system is set up, and we think it'll be met with the appropriate response.
So, the point that I'm looking at is what Councilmember Lewis spoke about. In other words, this got going, it is in our system, right. and the council member who lives in the district doesn't even know, much more the extension of the other 12 council members. I mean, that seems awfully sneaky.
Well, I would direct your request to the members of the neighborhood association who have petitioned it. Again, they have a right to to come to us and seek guidance and redress in their neighborhood. But I don't disagree with the position that this kind of thing needs a full public review. The neighborhood associations are their own kind of entity, as you know, and they have a lot of weight here in the city of Charleston, and we listen to them when they make requests. However, this downzoning is one that's very significant.
All right. But just like a property owner puts in a request for a rezoning, and we post a notice or send out a letter. That's correct. This is following the exact same procedure.
That's correct, Mayor. And to respond to that matter, we have already heard, as we expected, negative feedback from a number of affected landowners, and we expect that to increase. However, we have also heard support from this from other landowners. And to be clear, the individuals who requested this downzoning do in fact own properties that are among those affected by the change.
But how can they request a zoning change on property that they don't have a vested interest in? Now, if they want to have those 4 properties rezoned, I'm with you on that.
Right.
But let's just say all of this to my right is our neighbors in that community. The 2 immediate people up, the nice lady who came in and talked about tourism education, a very good point. I hope we follow up on that one year. And the kind policeman behind them. If they're not interested in that or even knowledgeable of that, how would their property be included? They're not a developer who's got a contractual interest or a property owner. That must be a weakness in our ordinance that allows that.
Well, we're happy to investigate the matter further as specifically related to this request.
I mean, if they want it for their 4 properties, no more out of me. But the ability to bring others into it like that, if that's the ordinance, North Charleston would be able to annex West Ashland just like that.
We will deal with not just the application, but how the application occurred, okay? I get it. We will do that. Councilmember Griffin and then Seeking.
Mr. Lindsay, so you say you get applications like this all the time?
Not all the time. It's unusual for us to receive a specific request on behalf of a neighborhood association for a zoning. That doesn't happen commonly.
Do you have to stick it through this process, or can you turn it down? Do we not have a common sense approach that we reach out to the neighborhood if a few people want something and the neighborhood overwhelmingly doesn't? Why does it have to go through this process?
Right, that's a great question. And The way that we go about this, such a thing is that you do in fact notice to the public, which is what happens when a request like that comes through. Letters go out and people know about it. Airing this in the forum of public debate is exactly how we do it. So that public notice is the way that people get information. But if there's a sense that the neighborhoods need to be more strongly sort of advised of these kinds of changes, we're happy to hear those suggestions.
Councilmember Seekins.
So, and I don't want to belabor this because I think the point's been made, and we're going to need to get our legal staff involved in this at some point, but it's no surprise to anyone here that I think that blanket rezonings are a bad idea. We've talked about it a lot. In the 9 years I've sat on this council, other than the city initiating that, I've never, ever heard of an individual, an association, a homeowners association, a group, a trade group, an advocacy group, anything going in front of the Planning Commission for a rezoning of properties that they have no interest in whatsoever. And that's troubling that, you know, we had to have our citizens come and tell these guys who've got to go out there and face their constituents every day that some of their constituents are trying to downzone other of their constituents' property. I would never want to be in the crossfire of that, and I just don't think that's appropriate. So I think one of the things that we need to do is give you the tools, if you don't have them, and you may already have them, that's why we need to get with legal, to take a look at something like that and say, this isn't going through the system because you don't have the right to do it constitutionally. You can't go, if I get a bang on my door saying your neighbor just applied to downzone your property, I can assure you, you and I'd have a very quick conversation.
So I certainly don't disagree with anything that I've heard from council tonight, and I look forward to, you know, digging further into that process.
I just think we need to have a conversation between legal and you all and the mayor's office and us just to make sure we understand what the rules of the road are to get a piece of paper or online application to the Planning Commission. Who's got the right to even get it in front of them for a debate? And I just don't think someone who has no inherent property right and ability to control that property, even a homeowners association, which they have no right to control anything, can go apply to the Planning Commission for zoning change, right? I mean, it just, to me,
it sounds like that case against, that we recently argued in court against North Charleston, you know, about vested rights.
Exactly. Well, and look, one of the things that this council has been particularly sensitive to, and maybe I'm not one of them as much, but, you know, is avoiding litigation. I can assure you the minute this thing gets going, if it gets any legs at all, there's going to be all sorts of litigation over this, and that's crazy. Anyway.
Moody next. And
Didn't that exact, almost same thing happen? You said you never heard of it, but didn't the Planning Commission initiate a zoning change?
The spot zoning of the jail. Right.
Yeah, but they initiated, they had no interest in it. I mean, something's wrong with our system if this is going on.
We will get to the bottom of it, I assure you. Councilman Jackson, Councilmember Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that there are differences in what we're talking about here is egregious in that it's neighbors to neighbors making changes or trying to make changes that are extraordinary. But talking about the authority of the Planning Commission and the council and our planning staff to be coming to the council and Planning Commission within the overall comp plan and the zoning code that we have, that we know we need to be deciding about. I mean, that's a different set of parameters. So I hope we don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but I do think that what we're talking about right here with this neighborhood, West Side Neighborhood Association, is something that we should close all those loopholes and not allow.
Thank you. Councilmember Waring, and then let's try to move on.
Yeah, thank you. I also said earlier that why does the ordinance allow this to happen? Whatever we have in our ordinance that gave you the feeling or that you had to send letters out to these affected policies, that needs to change. That's the part of the ordinance that I'd like to have brought in front of us so we can change that.
Yes, sir.
I didn't even know that existed.
I did not either. We will check into it. All right. For petitions and communications, I would like to recognize one other guest we have here tonight, and then one other communication with the council as well. But she wasn't here in time to sign up for the public participation period. But Maria Elena Rowland is here, and I'd like for her to come forward. She runs Military Community Connections, which is now operating we call it our Day Resource Center. It's now, they like to call it the Navigation Center, because they are helping to navigate those who are experiencing homelessness and empowering them to a better place. And as you know, we opened the center last year, originally with another organization, and it was a little more to bite off than they could chew. And Maria Elena actually came to us by service on the mayor's commission on homelessness, nominated by North Charleston, correct? Mm-hmm. And because her organization was operating in North Charleston by the name Helping Veterans Who Were Experiencing Homelessness. And when this kind of void occurred last year, she was willing to step up to the plate and operate the center for us. And I got to tell you, I invite all of council to come down and visit and see what they are doing down there. It's remarkable how they are one by one helping people in need. It's really remarkable. With that intro, Maria Elena, please
thank you, Mayor
remarks with us.
Happy New Year to all of you. I just wanted to start the year off just to give you an update of what we're doing down there, and thank you and the city for the continued financial support, and we're going to definitely need it. Since we began, MCC has been really in the pulse of the homelessness where we are located at 529 Meeting Street. We've decided to call it the Navigation Center because we felt like we're helping to navigate people home for a variety of different services. Being down there, for a lot of people do outreach, but we have a different outreach of our homelessness. Our homeless are referring the homeless to us. We're not doing the outreach. We're getting our homelessness because we feed from the hot dog ministries Tuesdays through Sunday. We're there on the weekend, and we feed these people. So we're there meeting with them, talking to them, finding people that you would not normally find on the street. We currently have the MUSC clinic up and running, where we have the residents now doing their residency there in our clinic, and it's been overwhelming. We actually opened up a waiting room because we have so many people, and we partner with with Alan, who does the Outstreet ministries as far as on the street, so they're helping these residents. We also have the Department of Mental Health. Unfortunately, we haven't had them there as much as we need to, but what we're doing differently and what we've seen, we can always find them jobs, we can always find them housing, we can get them in housing, but can we keep them there? Can we make them happy in this transition? And what we have found is the gaps of services are not necessarily of having the community partners within. We have wonderful community partners. We partner with 180 Origin. My sister's house is now inside of our places because we're seeing probably close to 25% are women coming from those types of issues. We're seeing a lot of families lately. We have currently, what we know of, at least 10 are in hotels that we're working with to get them out. But really the foundation that we need is more on a mental and keeping them transitioning and staying there. We've had some cases where we've got them off the street and into the place, but sometimes it's a risk of the failure again, of not going into housing because they don't want to fail. It's a lot easier to live on the street. I know that sounds pretty strange for most of us, but when you are where we are in the pulse of all of this, living this every day with these people and living with them and talking to them every day and gradually get them. It doesn't just happen overnight. It doesn't happen with them just walking in and filling out an intake form. We have to build a relationship. I have to give a hug every once in a while. I have to tell them they're worth something. I have to tell them that you're loved. I have to tell them, let's just start with the Department of Mental Health. Let's talk to somebody. It takes time, and we are doing it. Since September 4th, we've seen close to 400 clients and our little staff of 4. We still manage our office for veterans up in the north, at SC Works in North Charleston. And what we've done is we've created the template that the VA uses using the homeless alignment team, using social workers and case managers to follow these people all the way through. We need the support from the city. We thank the financial support that we've gotten so far, but we've got a lot of ideas, and we want to continue the support in taking this to a different level. We are now part of the continuum of care, and we are the access point because there's a lot of homelessness that people aren't seeing, the hidden, that we see here at the center. So I thank you all. I welcome you to come. We are doing I want to say, a drop-in reopening naming on January 28th from 4 to 7. Our clients will be navigating you through our center to show and share with you everything we're doing. I want to mention that we also have Eckerd, have signed an MOU with us, and SC Works. So now we're not only finding jobs, we're working with existing programs in the state under the Workforce Investment Opportunity Act and opening up the door to these people of clusters of jobs that are available to them that they deserve. And we're taking this employment seriously, but we also have to build that foundation of making sure their transition is secure. So again, I thank you all, and I open the doors to come anytime. If you can't come the 28th, we have a lot of people that just drop in. And again, thank you for giving me this time, and Happy New Year.
Thank you, Maria Elena. This is true boots on the ground, compassionate, incredible work being done. And thank you to City Council for helping make it possible with the opening of the center last year. Councilmember Waring.
What's that address list?
529 Meeting Street. And although you do enter from the rear on Walnut Street, that's the main entrance really. And there will be an open house on the 28th of January, 4 o'clock until 7. 4 to 7. Yeah, 4 to 7. And we ask you all to come and check it out. It's really, really remarkable what we all together are doing. But special thanks to you. This is a compassionate, wonderful woman. I'm going to. Okay, and speaking of wonderful women, I have some sadness to announce the retirement, I'm going to call it. Colleen Carducci is looking to move back home to Minnesota to be close to her mom, who's getting up there in age, and so Colleen and her husband are going to be moving back there, and she's done a remarkable job looking out for the city of Charleston during the last 17 years now, Colleen? Just over 15 years. A terrific service to our city, and I would like for council to recognize Colleen also. Thank you so much. Okay, on to our committee reports. First, on public safety, as a result of our of a plastics ban that we passed last month, we delved into what we might do about Keep Charleston Beautiful and litter. Councilmember Shade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council, Madam Clerk. The Public Safety Committee met on Friday, January 4th at the ungodly hour of 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We had a full attendance of our committee members. Before I get into the meat of our committee report, you should have received an email from Mr. Charles Francis back on January 3rd. Tomorrow, January 9th, is National Law Enforcement Day, and they've encouraged all of us to wear something blue in support of our police officers. So if you haven't received this, I would just ask that you wear something blue tomorrow in support of our police officers, yes, tomorrow, and take a picture and send it to Mr. Francis so they can post it appropriately that we support our police. What the mayor had just said earlier, that following our discussion on the plastic bag ban, members of council had brought up questions about litter and litter control. So my promise that we would have a special public safety meeting to discuss that. Dan Riccio is present with us and made a presentation as to some of the issues dealing with that. Dan, do you want to come iterate some of that, or you want me to do it for you? Well, all right, the highlights of what he had brought to our attention, I'll let him fill in the blanks if he wants to, is that one of the biggest problems is that there was not enough awareness of our responsibility with litter control. and that we need to do a better job of getting the word out about what our responsibility is to do that. One of the problems that he was able to notice was trash coming out of vehicles heading to the landfill, particularly commercial trucks, and as I think it's flying off. I know in my neighborhood on Sam Wittenberg, up and back and forth on by North Bridge, it's a huge problem with the amount of trash that's flying out of the back of cars, and our Old Town Task Force is out there on a regular basis cleaning up. You see the piles of trash they're collecting. So once you fill in from that point, if you don't mind.
Not a problem. We have a preliminary plan we have together, which is going to include, again, awareness. We're going to focus on education, awareness, and enforcement. We've got a lot of key players that we're going to get involved, from neighborhood services to livability to volunteers to DOT and our public information. Our goal is to keep it at the forefront year-round instead of maybe a short period of the year just bringing awareness to it and reminding individuals. But we're going to do a collaborative effort, state, city, possibly county, and so we can combat it one group or one at a time. But again, the corridors are the focus. As you know, you'll go down the interstate and the 526 and Paul Cantrell and James Island Connector and things of that nature. But a lot of the majority of the litter is coming from uncovered loads or trucks that are not properly covered. So we're going to address that, even to make the city and other municipalities responsible when they are going to the landfill day in and day out. You would not believe how much litter is being deposited on the streets, blocking storm drains. Obviously, it's aesthetically unpleasing. So I've already got meetings in place. We're moving forward. We are just going to put everything together and do it as a year-round type of program rather than a periodically done program. And hopefully that'll get a lot of attention and awareness.
And one of the campaign slogans suggested by one of our colleagues was, "Pick it up, Charleston." So we'll see if that flies and how that may come in. But we're going to get a report and an update in about a month from him as to what progress we made and how this is going to shake out.
Thank you.
Any
this
further
board,
comments? Councilmember Waring?
You know, we, from time to time, get some pretty good ideas from citizen participation. And we all heard one today about landscapers blowing those leaves into the drainage system and obviously the ditches and whatnot. Why isn't that littering?
I'm sorry?
I mean, why isn't that a litter problem? That's a litter problem. In other words, does our ordinance need to be strengthened?
No, we do have specific ordinance addressing that very issue of blowing debris into or putting debris into a storm drain. We enforce it. Unfortunately, we can't, be everywhere. We rely on people to call us. If they call us, hey, if we get that a lot, they'll call us in the neighborhoods, hey, they're blowing the litter or the debris into the storm drain. We respond, we issue summonses, but we do address it. It's just, we have even sent letters, and I'm going to probably have to do that again, to, there's so many landscaping companies though, but trying to get the main ones, you kind of get the idea of who the main companies are that services our city, so we're going to try that approach again. But there is a specific ordinance on the books to address specifically depositing debris into storm drains.
So they're all supposed to have a business license, landscapers, so let's get the list of landscapers that have a business license and contact
Absolutely.
them all. Councilmember Shealy?
I was just going to let Councilman Waring know that I had some complaints in my district, and Livability jumped right on it and took care of it, so where they were putting debris over storm drains and what they doing.
In addition, I've shared just this week, I think, or maybe it's going out next week, the ordinance, sharing with all our neighborhood presidents and leadership to remind everyone that if you're a property owner, you are responsible for the maintenance all the way out to the street or the curb. both in terms of litter and in terms of vegetative growth. And so we need to remind people that they do have that responsibility.
And Mr. Mayor, I remind you that you made a personal visit to the CVS on Orange Grove Road, and it's gotten a lot better since you knocked in the door. So thank you for your weight behind that. So we should get an update from the Public Safety Committee in about a month's time as to where we stand with this campaign. Right. We did hear from Chief Reynolds. Chief, do you want to? He's over there talking to Jason. Yep, I'm trying to.
Not really on
He gave us a quick update on recent shootings around the city. He reported to us that at the end of the calendar year, we had 10 homicides and 15 traffic fatalities. Prior to the beginning of the holiday season, I participated with Councilmember Seekings and the mayor in a joint news conference that they had with the Mount Pleasant Police Department, North Charleston Police Department, County Sheriff's Office, and Highway Patrol on enforcement, and I think that was pretty successful, Chief, on what we're doing. Any other comments you want to share with the homicides and recently that we just experienced?
I'll start on the traffic. We just had a committee meeting today on our traffic and ended the quarter. At the end of this year, our traffic collisions are down significantly. That was a positive to report, and a lot of good collective efforts. In terms of the shootings, we've had a lot of visible events. We had a shooting outside of Citadel Mall, as I'm sure everybody's aware, on one of our busiest shopping days in the parking lot right outside the food court. We've had 2 homicides this year already in less than a week. What I can tell you, most of these events, the victim knows the offender. In many of the events, they're related to things such as the drug trade, retaliation, domestic violence. The most recent homicide that we had a gentleman in his 70s who was a stepfather, and the victim was in his 50s. And the mother was in the house, and in a nutshell, we're fighting over food. And this stepson was killed, shot in the head. So I think the message, if I could, is that we're working really hard. We're working collaboratively with all of our partners, with the community. I know in particular we're probably going to have a meeting in West Ashley. I think January 28th is starting to kind of line up, which is a Monday night. I think we're probably going to be having a meeting at that time, still kind of finalizing the details. There's too many guns in people's hands where they don't have any conflict resolution skills or a desire to solve problems, I think, in a responsible way. So I think we have to continue to talk about this. We have to continue to educate and need to be really emphasizing responsible gun ownership, and we really need to take a stand against violence in our communities. It's a fairly complex problem. The one thing that every one of these have in common is every one of them is preventable and they shouldn't have happened. So we all have a responsibility in this conversation in keeping our communities safe. I can tell you that I've met with one too many mothers right here in Charleston who's lost a son or a daughter, mostly sons, to gun violence. And when you sit down with a mother who's lost a son to gun violence, it's a humbling experience. So I think it is important for us to talk about this. We talked about it in the Public Safety Committee meeting. It's also important, I think, to point out that Charleston is a very safe city. West Ashley in particular is a very safe community. When you take out these shootings, these homicides where the victim knows the offender, where there's some specific circumstances, and you take those cases out, not to diminish the importance of those lives and those families that are affected by that, we have a very safe community. We have to pay attention to these issues, though.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Griffin.
Chief Reynolds, you talk about traffic collisions, and unfortunately we had one today between a young child and a vehicle early this morning in Shadow Moss. What can we do to sort of make sure that the public understands that we're going to take a step to ensure safety. We don't know exactly what happened this morning. All that we can hope for right now is a fast recovery from the young child involved, but it could have been a lot worse. I was thinking about myself going out there for the next few mornings wearing a protective vest and trying to help facilitate to make sure that children are up on the sidewalks and that people are obeying traffic laws. But I was hoping that maybe we could get maybe a squad car, somebody to roll through there around the time that the kids are at the bus stop, just because how serious of a situation that could have been this morning.
Absolutely. And we can and will do that. And I think your point's a good one because the community is obviously upset. They should be. We all should be. Again, most of these collisions, what they have in common is they're preventable. So we actually had a comprehensive meeting today with a lot of our partners. Traffic and transportation was represented there. We've talked about the 3 E's, education, enforcement, engineering. We're hitting all sides of that equation. I know that Keith's having a big summit coming up. I'm sure he's going to talk about that to be more strategic. But each day, we all as a community have a responsibility. I can tell you, we've begun our enforcement efforts. We're just getting started. And just as an example, we did some enforcement on the Ravenel Bridge, which is 55 and then it goes quickly to 45, and we were getting them in the 80s. We did one day on 526 and we had them up to in the mid-90s. That's too fast. That's behavior that needs to be modified. It's better to do it through awareness and education and talking about these things. Certainly engineering has a big factor, but part of it's going to be enforcement as well. I will tell you a positive that I heard in today's meeting. We had the county sheriffs, the city, and some other folks. We did a lot of sobriety checkpoints New Year's Eve. Almost all of the people, and they said this is, I'm new here, but these guys have been doing this for many, many years. They all were actually pleasantly surprised. Most of the people they stopped were in Ubers and Lyfts, probably 90+%. They did not get one DWI arrest from the sobriety checkpoint specifically. They got a handful of other arrests, and I think we had a collision, but no fatalities. And the direction of that was a positive one with Uber and Lyft and some of the people, I think, choosing not to drive.
All right, I don't think we need to vote on any matter from this committee. So anything else?
We'll get back with you on the citizens meeting on January 28th for the details and confirmation of that meeting.
Great. Thank you very much. Next is our Committee on Recreation, Councilmember Gregory.
Mr. Mayor and Council, the Recreation Committee met on January 7th at 3 o'clock. I know that our agenda looks extensive. However, we're only going to discuss item A. We will take B items up in another meeting. Presentation on Charleston Charm was introduced to the Recreation Committee by Councilmember Griffith. And Charleston Charm is a proposal and an approach that has been developed by Ventura, California, specifically to deal with homeless issues. And they do have some creative approaches. While the only action we took on it was to make sure that since our Department of Housing and Community Development is responsible for the implementing the Mayor's Commission on Homelessness, that before we go any further, that we give audience to the Community Development Department for further discussion so that we can, in fact, sort of take a more comprehensive and consolidated approach. Any comments, Councilman Griffith?
I just want to say that, you know, we proved it right here tonight. We had talked about the Navigation Center. We talked about the litter problem. And, you know, this Charleston Charm, or this idea, you know, Council Member Jackson says we need a different name because it reminds her of Southern Charm, which we definitely don't want.
Well, that's pretty trashy too.
Yes, yes, it is. But I'm not going to be able to fix that, unfortunately. But all these ideas, and there's a lot of action steps already in place, but a comprehensive plan for homelessness, legitimate, concrete, some tangible goals over the next 10 years could do wonders for our city, you know, and we can look at some of these other cities that have already implemented different things, look at the great things that we're already doing, especially through our community development committee, and I was going to hope that I could come give this same presentation to y'all's committee at your next meeting, and then we can look as a group and decide how we want to put together some sort of comprehensive plan to combat homelessness. I mean, we're already doing a lot of good. We're doing a ton of good across a lot of different departments. Now we just have to work together to make sure that our departments are looking out for each other and look where our few spots that could be improved are, a few deficiencies, and one is finding some more work for those that are homeless. And that's where hopefully we can meet with this organization called the Street Team. They're doing it out in California, and they're now trying to expand their reach to other states. And their programs to get homeless to clean storm drains and pick up litter and get really concrete jobs. Those are the kind of things that could really, really benefit our city as a whole. Not only because we're going to be helping create more jobs and help people that have struggled, but also because we have a limited amount of resources to clean storm drains and pick up litter. And unfortunately, we can't always we can't always do it ourselves. So if we could create more jobs and do it, I think I don't see how you could argue that as a city.
And I did take a look over at our Director of Housing and Community Development as we spoke about this, because of course we do have a plan in place, a 10-year plan. And one of the things that we did discuss is let's not start with a blank slate. Let's determine what is in terms of what our Department of Community Development is already doing and whether any of the recommendations from Ventura can improve that plan. So under no circumstances am I saying that the City of Charleston does not have in place a 10-year plan to quote-unquote end homelessness. So there's no action required on this. It was just a simple recommendation that this presentation be provided to the Committee on Community Development. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And I think Councilmember Griffin plans to come to the Mayor's Commission on Homelessness as well. So thank you for bringing forward some good ideas. We can always use more of those and add to what we're doing. So next is our Committee on Traffic and Transportation. Before Councilmember Seeking speaks, so I want to thank him and also Councilmember Lewis for their service on CARTA. And you all know that Councilmember Seeking serves as chairman of CARTA as well. And I was so excited when you came to my office, was it just last week? Time flies around here. And he was with the staff from the COG to really start, in my estimation, for the first time, get down to the nitty-gritty of getting this low-country rapid transit system going. And today, in fact, I attended, they hosted a stakeholder meeting for low-country rapid transit. And it's going to take a while for us to get there, but it's really happening, y'all. It's really happening. I was excited, and I want to thank you, Chairman Seekins.
Well, thank you for being there. It was important that you were there, so thank you. So following the Low Country Rapid Transit kickoff, we did have a Traffic and Transportation Committee meeting today at 2, which was much better than 3 o'clock on Friday afternoon when it was originally scheduled. We had an interesting meeting. We had 2 applications for original certificate which need action by this council for approval. They were approved unanimously. Then we had 2 items that I just want to report out very briefly to y'all. We got a report from the BCD COG on the long-range transportation plan. The report was long, it's complicated. Just understanding what the long-range transportation plan is, and more importantly, what it isn't, is something I thought was important for our committee. And just so you know, the long-range transportation plan is not the only thing and not what totally dictates what happens in the Tri-County area, and in particular Charleston County in the future. This is a plan that takes us out to 2040. It is projected to have projects that total somewhere in the vicinity of $425 million. It does not include half-cent sales tax projects or projects that are brought to us by the state, for instance, the I-26, 526 corridor. It is a way for the COG, which is chartered to do this, of putting together a series of priorities in terms of access, intersection, and traffic flow in the region that aren't otherwise taken up by larger scale projects. We got a report about it today, and I'm happy to make sure you all get a copy of it. It's hard to comprehend, I think, is a fair statement. It's got a lot of things in it, but what it does show is that we have a lot of challenges in our region and a lot of people fighting for dollars for transportation projects, and we just have to stay vigilant in the city to make sure that we get our projects in line. The good news is, and Mr. Benjamin will tell me if I'm wrong about this, but the citywide transportation plans projects are incorporated in the long-range transportation plan. So kudos to Chairman Benjamin for making sure that he gets, or Director Benjamin gets our projects in there so the county are thinking about it. So it was a mouthful. There's more to come. It has not been adopted yet. It will be and then brought back to us. The second thing we talked about, and I just think that particularly for those of you representing West Ashley, especially outer West Ashley, we were talking about the West Ashley Connector Road, which is a very short piece of real estate that is going to connect the small circle inside the large circle of the West Ashley Circle to Grand Oaks Boulevard, where the Harris Teeter is being built, and it'll actually give access to people in Grand Oaks and that whole area, direct access to the circle, if it ever gets operative, and the Harris Teeter, which will ultimately open. I know. Anyway, that little stretch is going to go out, it's going to come to us, I guess, at our next meeting at Ways and Means for approval for design. And someone might ask what a quarter-mile stretch of road would it cost to design. I did look through the proposal.
$95,000.
Yeah, it's about $100,000. I knew the answer to that. But it is an opportunity, by the way, for those of you out there to make sure when they go and design this, there's a very large, wide right-of-way out there to make sure this is a fully accessible boulevard, not just a narrow street where people who are coming out of Grand Oaks don't necessarily have to drive alone over to the Harris Teeter or to the Circle. Put in big pedestrian, bike access, so all those things that we'll look for when we get that design. That will come back up to us. But for those of you who represent that area, know this is coming. It is connectivity between Grand Oaks and what is going to be a challenged area with flooding, with development, with the Circle and all that. So we're not going to take it up for another 2 weeks. So any questions, talk to Mr. Benjamin or me, and we can make sure you have it so you can talk to your constituents. With that, I would ask for approval of the report, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much. Next, our Committee on Public Works. Councilmember Waring.
I have to defer to the Vice Chair.
The Committee on Public Works and Utilities met today at 3 o'clock. We accepted, dedicated and accepted a portion of Forest Drive unanimously. And after a lengthy discussion on the freeboard requirements, we deferred for a month. And in that time, we're going to get a lot more information. We're going to be able to reach out to our constituents and believe it is going to be discussed at the Stormwater Committee, or what's the formal name of that?
It's the committee that's reviewing our stormwater manual.
Manual committee.
They meet next Thursday. We'll start with them.
They'll meet next Thursday, and then we'll get more information based on how that meeting goes so that we can take it back to our constituents and other stakeholders that would be involved, such as the home builders. There's just, this would be a big deal. So put a star by that on your agenda. There's going to definitely be a lot more information to come. And that's all we talked about. So ask for approval of that.
Okay, we got a motion to approve. Councilmember Seekings.
Mr. Mayor, on that ordinance, it was deferred and is going to be sent to the group that reviews stormwater. I do think this is, I mean, it's the raising the requirements of the freeboard, minimum heights of freeboard. It's going to include, among other things, if you're building a slab-on-grade building, fill dirt and all that kind of thing that goes along with construction. I do think as we are reorganizing our stormwater department that we probably, before we put this in place, need to make sure whoever our new director of that department is gets his or her hands and eyes on this as well, because it's a big ordinance, especially for areas that are going to go through development in the near future, large-scale single-family home developments. It seems like a little ordinance, but it really has a lot of implications for stormwater movement, flooding, and all of the things that we've been concerned about on this council for a good long time now. So need some thought before it gets back here for approval.
Absolutely, we'll do that.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilmember White.
Can I just, since we're talking about the committee that's reviewing the stormwater manual, and I'm on that committee, one of the things that came up, or to my mind, we had met a couple times. Of course, Ms. Cabinet's left us, and so we're in the process of trying to hire somebody for that position. But such an important process with the stormwater manual. To me, I just wonder if we need to sort of take a pause on that process. And I don't think we need to discuss, make it all known today, but if we're taking guidance from staff and others and trying to put this together, but yet we have somebody who may come from off or outside of Charleston take over this position, may have better ideas, and we've sort of then have to go back and reinvent the wheel, if you will. I want to put out there that it may be something that it may make sense to kind of slow the process just a little bit until we get somebody in that role.
Well, that's why we have the deferral today, and I hope to be interviewing as early as next week for a new director of the department. We do have a timeline to try to make this effective by August 1st, because that's when we'll be getting a review for our community rating system, I think they call it, CRS. So if we can move up a notch, we can save people more money on their flood insurance policies. And so it's all tied together. I think it's going to work out. We'll have time enough to consider this fully, answer the questions, and decide whether it's a good thing or not. But we did that today, put a little pause on it. Yes, sir.
And just, I forgot to mention that, that's a good point. The reason why this is such a big deal is because not only would it move us to FEMA +2, right now we're at FEMA +1, we are 400 and some odd points away from being a level 5 instead of a level 6, which means that if we're a level 5, our flood insurance premiums, we get a 25% discount compared to a 20% discount right now. And that's across the board for everybody in the city of Charleston.
Everybody in the city. I think every 5% would equate to about $2 million in savings for our citizens.
So that's why one of the reasons why this is such a big decision. But at the same time, we would have to have this program in place by August 1st in order to get that. In order to get the points towards that. So it's Stephen Jolka is doing a great job with this thing called the Drive for 5, which is his program that he's worked really hard on to get us to a level 5 instead of level 6. Ultimately, maybe this will be something that gets us points, but we now have time that we can figure out, how the stakeholders feel about it. So,
Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you. Thanks for chairing the meeting, Councilmember Griffin. I just, since we are discussing it, even though we have deferred this prior to coming to the council in a month, I think one of the major points that I took away from Mr. Jolka's explanation to us, in addition to all the things you've already just said, is that the city of Charleston and Mount Pleasant are the only two communities in this whole area that aren't already at FEMA +2, as you described it. So I think that we do have a season of working collegially. We know that every time we deal with a request, a complaint, a situation that's repetitive in our management of flood control and stormwater drainage systems and the whole gamut, we're trying hard to work across the jurisdictions because we know we can't solve our water challenges alone. And I think this is one more example of why we need to just get on, onto the same level playing field as all the other jurisdictions that are also regulating these same sorts of conditions, just like we are. So I think that's a big reason for me.
Councilmember Waring.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This pause hopefully will give all on council more time to consider unintended consequences that will affect every homeowner and every business person in every district in this city. For example, in Councilman Seeking's district, flood +2, let's just say Hugo came back and damaged the house from the top down. On a house that's now at grade, or on a house that's at flood level now. The cost of renovating that house and having to raise that house afterwards, the homeowner may find out that they're underinsured. So when you go from grade to have to raise it up 2 feet in the historic district, I've heard some prices from some people who challenge, who was thinking about raising their homes. It just knocked me to my feet. You can buy a house cash, West Ashley, for what it would cost to raise one house on the peninsula. So, in particular in the historic district. So there are situations to be considered. West Ashley and these big subdivisions, James Island, Johns Island, bringing in dirt on new subdivisions, that kind of thing, creating flooding on the previous neighbor who was at grade. So this is something where all of us need to do our homework on it, as opposed to not just depending on the Public Works Committee. You're right, Councilman White. It's very, very, very important.
Councilmember White.
A quick comment is that, you know, that's really a major component of this. Is obviously it's very expensive, but it's not only downtown. You know, if you got to raise a slab 2 feet, you know how expensive dirt is right now in Charleston? I mean, it's expensive. And so even if we save $2 million in premiums on flood insurance, I can assure you, if you got to pay to raise a house, you know, in a neighborhood, whether or not that's going to balance out cost-wise, I'm not certain. So again, I agree. I think there's a lot more discussion needs to happen here, because I don't think it's something that we just need to sort of fly straight into.
Right. It's clear that the overall goal is to help people protect their properties from flooding. And so I think we all share that goal. We just need to figure out the best way to get there. And Councilmember Shealy, could we call on you to help us drill down on the insurance question about all this? Yeah, that would be great. Councilmember. We'll rely on your expertise there.
I know we're going to move on from this topic, but I do want to set the, if there's any confusion about needing to raise our homes, no one is saying that in order to get this new level of rating that people would have to raise up their existing homes to meet this two-foot requirement. It's only for new construction, or if somebody was renovating their house to an extent that it was a substantial renovation. Then they would have to meet the increase in the, right now it's at 1 foot. So we're not talking about people having to go out and take loans in order to raise up their house, unless they're so concerned about already living in a neighborhood that floods repetitively, and a lot of people are volunteering to do that just to protect their property. So I totally support that we need to have ongoing education among ourselves and conversations.
Right. So we did have a couple of items on there for approval, I think, didn't we? So we have a motion to accept the report and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. Next, our Committee on Ways and Means. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. Next is our bills up for second readings. We have 3 items.
Second.
We got a motion to take 1 through 3 together for second reading. Any? Okay, we'll just take 1 and 3 together. Okay, we have a second for 1 and 3. Any discussion on those 2 items? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. Now for number 2. Oh, I'm sorry, third reading and ratification on 1 and 3. We have a motion and a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, the ayes have it. Now we go to number 2. Sorry about that.
I make a motion that we delete that clause that I spoke about in the real estate convenience clause, termination for convenience clause that was in that we take it out of the agreement we've got now, and then give it a second, third reading and pass it on to the IAAF for their.
I just have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
I mean, is there a reason why we took that out? I mean, it's a 2-year lease term, right?
It is. It gives either party the right to cancel the lease with 60-day notice.
Right. And we're taking that out?
Yeah. Can you think of a reason why we want to put them out within 60 days?
Or well, they might want to get out of it. I mean, I don't know.
But we all allies. We get together and work that out.
We can mutually agree if both parties agree, which would be fine. Yeah. So we have second reading on the floor, amended to remove the clause about termination by convenience.
Yeah,
Councilmember Gregory.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Did you have a discussion on the parking needs for the museum? And if so, what were the conclusions?
Discussion that the
Parking passes will be provided at the aquarium garage.
Okay. Are there a set of parking spaces specifically assigned to the Maritime Center that's closer in proximity than the aquarium parking garage?
Well, there's a parking lot right behind
I know there's
the
a parking
Maritime.
lot, but I'm just questioning whether or not any of those spaces are normally assigned to the Maritime Center.
Well, I know there's a few there right behind the building that say reserved for staff. We're still going to have our Maritime Center staff at the building. And so all I know is the answer today was there were parking passes to be provided at the aquarium garage.
And do we know how many?
I don't know how many. Okay. But I think we got plenty of capacity to give them. I think they have 15 employees
15,
or so
16,
coming.
yeah.
Hopefully
Yeah.
some of them will commute. But
okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
we'll cover them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. All in favor of the second reading as amended, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Now for third reading, ratification. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. So we have no bills up for first reading. We do have a call for an executive session on 2 subjects, one regarding the Local Development Corporation and another regarding the lawsuit on tour guide licensing. Do I hear a motion to go into executive session? We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? We'll go into executive session in my office after a 4-minute break.